The moment Jack Turner brushed the snow from her face, his world stopped. It was impossible. Emily had been dead for 3 years. He'd buried her himself, stood at her grave through endless Montana winters, raised their daughter alone. But here, lying frozen in a ditch beside a wrecked SUV, was his wife's face. The same scar, the same eyes, the same woman he'd loved since high school. Either he was losing his mind, or someone had brought the dead back to life. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. The blizzard hit Montana like a fist from God. Jack Turner had lived in Silver Ridge his whole life, 42 years of hard winters, thin summers, and the kind of silence that made you think too much. He knew how to read the sky, how to smell snow before it fell, how to drive through whiteouts that turned the world into nothing but static. But this storm was different. This was the kind of weather that killed people. His daughter Maddie was home, 12 years old, and waiting for him with hot cocoa and a Marvel movie queued up on their ancient TV. She'd made him promise, Dad, that he'd be back before dark. But then the radio had crackled to life while he was closing up the volunteer firehouse, and dispatch's voice had come through tight with worry. Anyone near mile marker 47? We've got an abandoned vehicle, SUV. Engine's cold. Driver's not responding. Jack had looked out the window at the sheets of white erasing the world, then at the photo of Maddie he kept pinned to the bulletin board. He'd thought about warm couches and movie nights. Then he'd grabbed his coat. That was an hour ago. Now his pickup crawled through the storm at 15 miles per hour, headlights barely cutting through the snow. The windshield wipers beat a desperate rhythm, losing the fight against the ice building up on the glass. Jack's hands ached from gripping the wheel. His breath fogged in the cab despite the heater running full blast. The old Ford's heating had been on its last legs for 2 winters now, but there was never money to fix it. The radio crackled again. "Jack, you out there?" He fumbled for the receiver. "Yeah, I'm close, maybe half a mile out." "Sheriff's department can't make it until morning. You're all we got." "I know." Jack squinted through the windshield. "I see something. Stand by." The dark shape of the SUV emerged from the white like a ghost ship. It was a newer model Honda, silver or maybe white, impossible to tell under the snow, canted at an angle in the ditch. The driver's side door hung open. Snow had already piled inside. Jack's stomach tightened. He pulled the pickup onto the shoulder and killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was broken only by the howl of wind. He grabbed his flashlight from the glove box, zipped his coat up to his chin, and pushed out into the storm. The cold hit him like a wall. Montana winters didn't play. They found every gap in your clothing, every exposed inch of skin, and they made you pay for being outside. Jack's breath crystallized instantly. His boots crunched through snow that was already knee-deep. He swept the flashlight beam across the abandoned SUV. The engine was dead. The keys still dangled from the ignition. A purse sat in the passenger seat. Contents spilled across the floor. No blood. No signs of struggle. No. But in weather like this, that didn't mean anything good. "Hello?" Jack shouted, his voice immediately swallowed by the wind. "Is anyone here?" Nothing. He circled the vehicle, flashlight beam cutting through the snow. And that's when he saw her. A dark shape on the ground, 20 feet from the SUV, half buried in the drift. Jack's heart kicked into overdrive. He ran, or tried to, fighting through snow that grabbed at his legs like hands, and dropped to his knees beside the body. It was a woman. Face down. Not moving. "Ma'am!" Jack rolled her over, his hands clumsy in his gloves. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" No response. Her skin was gray-white, lips tinged with blue. Hypothermia. Advanced. She was wearing jeans and a thin jacket, nowhere near enough for this weather. How long had she been out here? Jack brushed snow from her face to check for breathing, and that's when his entire world tilted sideways. He knew this face. He'd kissed this face on 1,000 mornings. He'd traced the line of that jaw with his fingers. He'd memorized the small scar near her upper lip. A bicycle accident when she was 7, she'd told him on their 3rd date. He'd held this face in his hands and promised to love it forever. This was Emily's face, his wife's face, his dead wife's face. The flashlight slipped from Jack's numb fingers and disappeared into the snow. For a moment, just a moment, his mind simply refused to process what his eyes were seeing. It was a trick of the storm. Hypothermia making him hallucinate. Grief finally breaking his brain after 3 years of holding it together for Maddie's sake. But no. He blinked hard, looked again. The woman was still there, still had Emily's face. Still had that scar, still had the exact curve of cheekbones that Jack had memorized down to the millimeter. "Emily?" The word came out broken, barely a whisper. The woman didn't respond. But she was breathing, shallow, rapid breaths that came in little clouds. Jack's training kicked in before his brain could catch up. Check airway, check breathing, check circulation. He felt for a pulse at her neck and found it, weak and thready, but there. Her skin was ice cold. She needed warmth immediately, or she was going to die right here in the snow. He scooped her into his arms. She was lighter than Emily had been, or maybe adrenaline was making him stronger. Her head lolled against his chest. Up close, the resemblance was even more impossible. The small mole near her left ear, the slight asymmetry of her eyebrows. Every detail matched. Jack carried her to the pickup, fighting against wind that tried to push him backward. He got the passenger door open and laid her across the bench seat as gently as he could, then cranked the heat to maximum. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely turn the key. The engine roared to life. Warm air, relatively warm anyway, began to flow from the vents. Jack grabbed the emergency blanket from behind the seat and wrapped it around the woman. Then he just sat there for a moment, staring at her face in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, his mind racing in circles. This wasn't possible. Emily was dead. He'd been to the funeral. He'd given the eulogy while Maddie sobbed in the front row. He'd picked out the casket, chosen the flowers, signed papers that made it official. His wife was buried in Silver Ridge Cemetery under a granite headstone that said, "Beloved wife and mother." He visited her grave every Sunday with fresh flowers. The dead didn't come back. But here she was, Emily's identical twin, wearing cheap clothes and no coat in the middle of a Montana blizzard. An unknown woman with his wife's face who'd somehow ended up half frozen in a ditch on the worst night of the year. Jack grabbed the radio with shaking hands. "Dispatch, this is Jack." Static, then, "Go ahead, Jack." "I found her. Female, mid-30s, severe hypothermia. I'm bringing her to my place. It's closer than the hospital, and the roads are too dangerous." "Copy that. We'll send an ambulance when we can." "Yeah." Jack hung up the receiver and put the truck in gear. The drive back to his cabin took forever. The storm had gotten worse, if that was possible. Snow flew horizontal across the road. The pickup fishtailed twice, and Jack's heart stopped both times. But he kept going, kept the truck pointed toward home, kept glancing over at the unconscious woman who wore his dead wife's face. "Who are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Just lay there, breathing her shallow breaths while the heat slowly brought color back to her skin. Jack's cabin sat at the end of a gravel road, 5 miles from the nearest neighbor. It was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room with a wood stove. But it was paid off, and it was warm, and right now that was all that mattered. He pulled up close to the front door and killed the engine. The house was dark, except for the flickering blue glow of the TV in the living room window. Maddie had fallen asleep on the couch, probably halfway through the movie. Jack felt a stab of guilt. He'd promised to be home, but there wasn't time for that now. He gathered the woman in his arms again and carried her through the storm to the front door. His keys were somewhere in his pocket, but with his hands full, he ended up kicking the door instead. "Maddie, open up!" A few seconds later, the door swung open. Maddie stood there in her pajamas, purple ones with little stars, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Dad, you said you'd be—" She stopped. Her mouth fell open. "Maddie, I need you to help me." Jack pushed past her into the warmth of the cabin. "Get me every blanket we have, and start water boiling for hot water bottles." But Maddie wasn't moving. She was staring at the woman in Jack's arms with eyes so wide they looked like they might fall out of her head. Her face had gone pale. "Daddy?" she whispered. That's Mommy." "No." Jack's voice came out harder than he meant it to. "No, sweetheart, it's not. Now please, I need those blankets." Maddie didn't move. But her face, now Maddie. His daughter flinched, then turned and ran toward the linen closet. Jack carried the woman to the couch and laid her down carefully. In the light of the living room, with the TV casting shadows across her features, the resemblance to Emily was even more devastating. Jack had to look away. He knelt beside the couch and began removing the woman's wet clothes with clinical efficiency. Socks first, then her jacket, then her jeans. Hypothermia didn't care about modesty. Under her clothes, her skin was mottled with cold, but he could see her color slowly improving. He checked her pulse again. Stronger now. That was good. Maddie returned with an armful of blankets and stood in the doorway, staring. "The water?" Jack prompted. "Right, yes." She disappeared into the kitchen. Jack piled blankets over the woman, tucking them around her carefully. Then he sat back on his heels and finally let himself really look at her face. It wasn't just similar to Emily, it was exact. The tiny scar near her lip, the way her hair fell across her forehead, the shape of her nose. Even her hands, he'd recognize those hands anywhere, the long fingers, the knuckles slightly too prominent. Emily had been self-conscious about her hands. She'd called them piano hands, even though she'd never played. This woman had the same hands. Jack's chest felt tight. His eyes burned. This wasn't grief playing tricks. This wasn't his imagination. This woman was lying on his couch, breathing, alive, wearing Emily's face like a mask. "How?" he whispered to no one. The woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. Jack leaned forward, heart hammering. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, you're safe. You're okay. Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. Brown eyes, exactly Emily's shade, and stared up at him with confusion and fear. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then, in a voice that made every hair on Jack's body stand up, Where am I?" It was Emily's voice. The same cadence, the same slight rasp, the same everything. Jack couldn't breathe. "You're in my home. I found you in the snow. You almost died. What's your name?" The woman blinked slowly. Her gaze drifted around the room, taking in the wood stove, the family photos on the mantel, the Christmas decorations Maddie hadn't let him take down yet, even though it was late January. When her eyes found Maddie standing in the kitchen doorway, she flinched. She swallowed hard. "My name is Claire." "Claire." Jack tested the name. It felt wrong in his mouth. "Claire what?" I don't remember." Her breathing was speeding up. Panic. "Where am I? What happened?" "You're in Silver Ridge, Montana. I'm Jack Turner. I'm a volunteer firefighter. You were in a car accident and—" "No." Claire tried to sit up, and Jack gently pushed her back down. "No, not an accident. Someone was following me, a dark car. They ran me off the road." Jack exchanged a glance with Maddie. "Who was following you?" "I don't know." Claire's hands came up to her face, trembling. "I don't know. I can't remember." Her voice cracked. "Why can't I remember?" "It's okay. You're safe now. The hospital," Claire interrupted. Her eyes had gone distant, like she was seeing something far away. "I was in a hospital, white walls, people in masks. They were doing something to me. I had to get out. I had to run." Jack's skin prickled. "What hospital?" I don't know." Claire's voice rose toward hysteria. "I woke up there and I didn't know how I got there, and they were... Okay. Shh." Jack caught her hands in his, trying to ground her. "You're safe now. Whatever happened, you're safe here. I promise." Claire's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment Jack forgot how to breathe. Those were Emily's eyes looking back at him, filled with terror and confusion and something else he couldn't name. Maddie crept closer, carrying a steaming mug. "I made tea," she said quietly. "Mom always said tea helps everything." Claire turned to look at Maddie, and something strange happened to her face. Her expression went blank, like she was seeing a ghost. "You?" she whispered. "I know you." Maddie froze. "What?" "Your face. I've seen your face." Claire's breathing was coming faster now. "In my dreams, or memories. I don't know. You were smaller, you were crying. There was There was a car crash, glass everywhere. Someone was screaming. Jack felt like he'd been punched in the gut. That was Emily's death, the accident that had killed her 3 years ago. He'd told Maddie about it, how Emily had been driving home from visiting her sister, how a drunk driver had crossed the center line, how she'd died before the ambulance arrived. How the hell did this stranger know about it? "Daddy?" Maddie's voice was very small. "What's happening?" Jack didn't have an answer. He stood up, his legs unsteady, and walked to the mantel where the family photos sat in neat frames. He picked up the largest one, the last picture of the three of them together, taken at Yellowstone 6 months before Emily died, and carried it back to the couch. "Do you recognize this?" He held it out to Claire with shaking hands. She took the frame, looked at it, and the color drained from her face so fast Jack thought she might pass out again. "That's me," she whispered. "But I don't remember this." She looked up at Jack, then at Maddie, then back at the photo. Her fingers traced the glass over Emily's smiling face. "This is me. But I've never met you. I've never been here. How is this me?" The mug fell from Maddie's hands and shattered on the floor. Hot tea splashed everywhere, but nobody moved to clean it up. Jack's mind was spinning. This was insane. This was impossible. People didn't just show up wearing other people's faces. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't... Headlights swept across the living room window. Jack's head snapped up. Through the storm, he could see a vehicle pulling up to the cabin. Not the ambulance. That was still at least an hour away. This was a dark sedan, unmarked, moving slow and careful through the snow. "Did you call someone else?" Maddie asked. "No." Jack moved to the window and looked out. 2 men were getting out of the sedan, both wearing black parkas, no uniforms, no emergency lights. They were looking at his pickup truck, then at the cabin, talking to each other in the storm. Claire made a sound behind him, half gasp, half sob. "They found me!" Jack turned. Claire had gone sheet white, the photo frame clutched to her chest. "What?" "The car, the dark sedan." Her voice was shaking. "That's them. That's the car that ran me off the road." One of the men started walking toward the cabin. The other went back to the sedan and opened the trunk. Jack's blood went cold. Every instinct he'd honed over 20 years of emergency response was screaming at him. Something was very, very wrong here. "Maddie, go to your room, now." "But Dad, now." His daughter ran. Jack heard her bedroom door slam. He moved to the gun cabinet in the corner, his hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. He kept a hunting rifle and a shotgun, both legal, both registered, both loaded for emergencies. He grabbed the rifle. Claire was trying to stand wrapped in blankets, her legs shaking. "We have to run. We have to..." "You can barely walk, and there's nowhere to go in this storm." Jack chambered around, the sound loud in the quiet cabin. "Get down behind the couch." "But do it!" A heavy knock rattled the front door. Jack positioned himself in the center of the room, rifle held low but ready. "Who is it?" he called. A man's voice, muffled by the storm. "Mr. Turner? We're with the state police. We're looking for someone." Jack's jaw tightened. That wasn't a Montana accent. East Coast, maybe New York or New Jersey. And state police didn't just show up in unmarked sedans in the middle of blizzards. "Let me see your badges," Jack said through the door. Silence. Then, "Mr. Turner, this would be a lot easier if you just cooperated. We have reason to believe a dangerous individual is in your home. For your safety and your daughter's, we need you to open the door." The mention of Maddie made Jack's blood run hot. "Show me your badges or get off my property." Another pause. Jack could hear them talking to each other outside, but couldn't make out the words. Then the man spoke again, and this time there was no pretense of friendliness. "We know she's in there. We tracked her vehicle. You can hand her over easy, or we can make this difficult. Your choice." Jack's finger moved to the trigger. "I don't know what you're talking about, and unless you've got a warrant, you're trespassing." "Mr. Turner, I'm a volunteer firefighter and a trained marksman. I've got a rifle pointed at this door. You've got 3 seconds to get back in your car." The silence stretched out. Jack could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the rifle in his hands, could sense Claire hiding behind the couch, could imagine Maddie terrified in her bedroom. Then came the crash of breaking glass. The living room window exploded inward. Jack spun, bringing the rifle up, but one of the men was already halfway through, gun drawn. Jack fired without thinking. The shot went high, punching through the wall, and the man dove to the floor. The front door burst open. The second man charged in, and Jack swung the rifle toward him. For one frozen moment, Jack stared down the barrel at a stranger's face, at the gun pointed back at him, at the choice between pulling the trigger and watching Maddie grow up without a father. Then Claire moved. She erupted from behind the couch with a scream, still wrapped in blankets, and threw herself at the man by the door. It was a desperate, graceless attack, all momentum and no technique, but it caught him by surprise. He stumbled backward, and his gun went off with a deafening boom that blew a chunk out of the ceiling. Jack didn't hesitate. He lunged forward and drove the rifle stock into the first man's face. Bone crunched. The man went down hard. The second man was trying to push Claire off him, trying to bring his gun to bear. Jack dropped the rifle and grabbed the nearest thing, a cast-iron skillet Maddie had left on the stove, and swung it like a baseball bat. It connected with the man's shoulder with a wet thud. He howled and dropped the gun. "Claire, get back!" Jack yelled. She rolled away. Jack swung the skillet again, and this time he didn't miss. The man crumpled. For a moment, the cabin was silent except for Jack's ragged breathing and the whistle of wind through the broken window. Snow was already starting to pile on the floor. One man was unconscious. The other was groaning, clutching his face. Jack picked up both guns, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. He looked at Claire, who was sitting on the floor wrapped in blankets, staring at the unconscious men with wide eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head mutely. "Maddie," Jack called. "Are you okay?" His daughter's door opened a crack. "Dad?" "Stay in your room, sweetheart. Everything's fine." It was a lie. Nothing was fine. Two armed men had just tried to break into his home to kidnap a woman who looked exactly like his dead wife. Jack's mind was racing, trying to put pieces together that didn't fit. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. It took 3 tries. His fingers kept missing the buttons, but finally it connected. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jack Turner, 247 Pine Ridge Road. I've got 2 intruders armed. I've subdued them, but I need sheriff's deputies here now. Are you or anyone else injured? No, but... Jack looked at Claire, at the men on his floor, at the shattered window. These men claim to be state police. They're not. They tried to kidnap someone. The dispatcher's voice sharpened. Deputies are en route. ETA 20 minutes. Do you have the intruders secured? Yeah. Jack grabbed duct tape from his utility drawer and began binding the men's hands. The conscious one tried to fight, and Jack pressed a knee into his back. Stay down, or I'll make you stay down. The man spat blood. You have no idea what you're doing. That woman is government property. You're interfering with... Shut up. Jack taped his mouth for good measure. Government property? Claire's voice was small. What does that mean? Jack didn't answer. He finished securing both men, checked them for additional weapons, found 2 knives and a phone, then turned to Claire. She looked like she might shatter. The blankets had fallen away, leaving her in just her underwear and one of Jack's t-shirts that someone must have put on her while she was unconscious. Her skin was still pale. Her eyes were huge. They're going to kill me, she whispered. Aren't they? No. Jack said it with more confidence than he felt. No, I won't let that happen. You don't understand. You don't know what they did. Her voice broke. I remember pieces. A facility. Underground, maybe. White rooms, people in surgical masks. They were changing me, fixing me. I don't know. I was someone else before. I know I was. But I can't remember who. Jack's chest felt tight. Do you remember the name Emily? Claire looked at him, really looked at him, searching his face like she was trying to find something lost. No, I'm sorry. I don't remember anything before waking up in that place. Just flashes. A little girl crying, a car crash, someone holding my hand. But it's like remembering a dream. I can't tell what's real. The sound of sirens cut through the storm. Red and blue lights flickered through the broken window. Jack stood and went to open the door. The real police this time, he hoped. Sheriff Marcus Wade came in, stamping snow off his boots, 2 deputies behind him. Marcus had been sheriff for 15 years, had known Jack since he was a kid. His face was grim. "Hell of a night, Jack. You all right?" "Been better." Jack gestured at the 2 men on the floor. "These guys broke in trying to kidnap her." He nodded toward Claire, who'd pulled the blankets back around herself. Marcus's eyebrows went up. He looked at Claire for a long moment, and Jack saw recognition flicker across his face. Marcus had been at Emily's funeral, too. "Jesus, Jack, that's not Emily," Jack said quickly. "Her name is Claire, and I don't know what's going on, but those men said she was government property." Marcus knelt beside one of the unconscious men and pulled out his wallet. Federal ID. He looked at his deputies. "Get these guys secured in the squad car and call the state police, the real ones. We're going to need backup." As the deputies hauled the men outside, Marcus turned back to Jack. "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning." So Jack did. The abandoned SUV, finding Claire in the snow, her face, the men showing up, the fight, all of it. By the time he finished, more vehicles had arrived. Real state police, an ambulance, even a couple of FBI agents who'd apparently been in the area on another case. The cabin turned into controlled chaos. People taking photos, people asking questions, people examining Claire like she was evidence instead of a person. Through it all, she sat wrapped in blankets, answering questions in a quiet voice, flinching every time someone touched her. Jack stood in the corner with a cup of coffee someone had pressed into his hands, watching it all and feeling like he'd fallen into someone else's nightmare. One of the FBI agents, a woman named Rivera, pulled him aside. "Mr. Turner, I need you to understand something. This woman might be connected to a classified program. If that's true, there are going to be serious complications." "What kind of program?" Rivera's expression was unreadable. "I can't discuss that. But I need to know, has she said anything about where she's been? What was done to her? She doesn't remember, and she's hypothermic and traumatized. Maybe back off a little." "I understand this is difficult, but no." Jack set down his coffee with enough force to slosh it over the rim. "You don't understand. That woman almost died tonight. Armed men broke into my home and tried to kidnap her. My daughter is terrified in her bedroom. So unless you're going to arrest me for defending my family, I think we're done here." Rivera studied him for a long moment. "We'll need to interview her at the hospital." "Fine. But I'm going with her." "That's not—" "I'm going with her," Jack repeated. "Non-negotiable." Rivera sighed. "All right, but Mr. Turner, be careful. Whatever this woman is involved in, it's dangerous. People have died over less." They took Claire away in the ambulance. Jack rode with her, leaving Maddie with Marcus's wife, Carol, who'd driven over to help. The storm was finally starting to break, but the roads were still treacherous. In the ambulance, with the paramedics checking Claire's vitals and asking questions, Jack sat in the corner and tried to process everything that had happened. His hands were shaking, his adrenaline was crashing. He felt hollowed out. Claire caught his eye. "Thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to help me. You should have just let them take me." "Nobody's taking anybody," Jack said. "Not while I'm breathing." "But you don't even know me." Jack looked at her face, Emily's face, and felt his chest constrict. "No, but I'm going to figure out who you are, and why someone would go through all this trouble to find you." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "What if I'm not a good person? What if I did something terrible and that's why they were after me?" "Then we'll deal with that when we know for sure." Jack leaned forward, his voice firm. "But right now, you're someone who almost died in the snow. You're someone who helped fight off armed intruders. That's what I know. That's what matters." The ambulance hit a patch of ice and skidded. Everyone grabbed for handholds. The paramedics swore. But they stayed on the road, kept moving forward through the storm toward the hospital, and whatever answers waited there. Jack looked out the window at the endless white landscape and thought about his wife. About Emily, who'd died 3 years ago. About the woman sitting across from him wearing Emily's face. About the men who'd called her government property. About the pieces of a puzzle that made no sense. And he thought, This isn't over. This is just beginning. The storm had passed, but Jack had a feeling that a much darker tempest was on its way. The fluorescent lights of Silver Ridge Memorial Hospital buzzed like dying insects, casting everything in a sterile white glow that made Jack's eyes ache. He'd been sitting in the same plastic chair outside Claire's room for 3 hours now, watching doctors and nurses and federal agents parade in and out, each one wearing the same carefully neutral expression that told him exactly nothing. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten. His ribs hurt where one of the intruders had caught him with an elbow during the fight, and there was a cut on his hand that he didn't remember getting. But he stayed in that chair because leaving felt like abandoning Claire to whatever governmental machinery was grinding into motion around her. Agent Rivera appeared at the end of the hallway, walking with another agent Jack hadn't seen before, a tall man with silver hair and a face like carved granite. They stopped at the nurse's station, heads bent together in conversation. The man glanced toward Claire's room, then at Jack. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made Jack's skin prickle. "Mr. Turner." Rivera approached alone. "This is taking longer than expected. You should go home. Get some rest. We'll call you when—" "I'm not leaving. Your daughter needs you." "My daughter is with Sheriff Wade's wife, probably asleep by now, and she knows I'm here." Jack met Rivera's eyes. "I'm not leaving Claire alone with people who might hand her back to whoever tried to kidnap her." Rivera's jaw tightened. "We're the FBI, Mr. Turner. We're the good guys. The men who broke into my house had federal IDs, too." Jack stood, his knees popping. He was too old for this kind of night. "So forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly trusting right now." The older agent drifted closer, hands in his pockets. Up close, Jack could see the man was probably in his 60s, with the kind of weathered competence that came from decades of field work. His ID badge said his name was Marcus Chen, Senior Investigator. "Mr. Turner, I understand your concern, but you need to understand the situation you've walked into." Chen's voice was quiet, reasonable. "The woman in that room is connected to a classified program that was shut down 2 years ago, a program that some very powerful people would prefer stayed buried." Jack's stomach dropped. "What kind of program?" Chen and Rivera exchanged glances. Rivera shook her head slightly, but Chen continued anyway. "The kind that involved experimental medical procedures, identity reconstruction, witness protection taken to an extreme. And before you ask, yes, it was illegal. That's why it was shut down." Identity reconstruction. Jack's mind raced. "You mean they took someone and— what? Changed them? Made them look like someone else?" "More than that. They attempted to rewrite entire personalities, create completely new identities from scratch. The theory was that you could take someone in extreme danger, a witness to organized crime, an intelligence asset who'd been compromised, and give them a new life so complete that they'd actually become that new person." Jack felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "You're saying Claire isn't real. She's someone else wearing a new face." "We're saying she might be. The program used advanced facial reconstruction, but the psychological component never worked properly. Patients either rejected the new identity entirely or developed severe dissociative disorders. Most of them ended up in psychiatric facilities. Some disappeared." Chen paused. "Some died." "And Emily?" Jack's voice came out rough. "My wife. Claire has her face. Exactly her face. How is that possible unless—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't voice the thought that had been growing in his mind since he'd pulled Claire from the snow. Rivera answered for him. "Unless your wife was involved in the program somehow, as a template perhaps. We're looking into it, but her records are sealed. Whatever connection exists, someone went to a lot of trouble to hide it." Jack's hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists. "I want to see her. Now. The doctors are still— I don't care what the doctors are doing. I want to see Claire. Or do I need to call a lawyer?" Chen held up a hand. "Let him in, Rivera. He's earned that much." Rivera looked like she wanted to argue, but she stepped aside. Jack pushed past her and into Claire's room. The space was small and dim, lit only by the glow of medical monitors. Claire lay in the hospital bed, IV lines running into her arm, her face turned toward the window. She looked impossibly small and vulnerable in the oversized hospital gown. Her dark hair spread across the pillow. Emily had looked like that once, Jack remembered, after Maddie was born, exhausted but radiant, holding their daughter for the first time. The memory hurt like a knife between his ribs. Claire's eyes opened when she heard him enter. "Jack," her voice was hoarse. "They told me you were still here." "Where else would I be?" He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." "Which I guess I kind of did." She tried to smile, but it came out wrong. "The doctors say I'm lucky. Hypothermia could have killed me. You saved my life." "Those men would have killed you if they'd gotten you back to wherever they came from." Claire's smile faded. "The agents told me about the program, about what they think was done to me." Her hands twisted in the blanket. "They showed me a file, said my fingerprints matched someone named Sarah Mitchell, a woman who disappeared 2 years ago from a federal witness protection facility in Maryland." Jack leaned forward. "Jack, do you remember being Sarah?" "No, nothing. It's like my life started 3 months ago when I woke up in that facility." Her voice cracked. "They kept me in a white room, fed me through a slot in the door. Once a day, someone would come take blood samples. They never spoke to me, just observed me, like I was an experiment." "How did you escape?" "There was a fire. Or maybe an explosion. I'm not sure. Alarms started going off and people were running. My door wasn't locked for once, so I ran too." She closed her eyes. "I stole clothes from a locker room, found a car with keys in it, just drove until the gas ran out, then stole another car. I didn't know where I was going, just away." "And you ended up in Montana." "I was driving through the storm when that sedan appeared in my rearview mirror. They tried to run me off the road multiple times before they finally succeeded. I remember the SUV sliding, the world spinning, and then snow. Cold. I thought I was going to die out there." Her eyes found his. "And then you found me." Jack wanted to reach for her hand but stopped himself. Every instinct in his body was screaming that this was Emily, that his wife had somehow come back to him. But that was impossible. Emily was dead. This was a stranger who'd been surgically altered to look like her, some woman named Sarah who'd gotten caught up in something horrific. Except the way Claire looked at him felt familiar. The small gestures, how she tucked her hair behind her ear, how she worried her bottom lip when she was thinking. Those were Emily's habits, movements so ingrained that Jack had memorized them over 15 years of marriage. "The agents said you saw a photo," Claire continued quietly, "of your wife, of Emily. They said I look exactly like her." "You do?" "That must be... I can't imagine how hard this is for you." Jack laughed, but it came out bitter. "Hard doesn't cover it. I buried my wife 3 years ago. Spent 3 years learning how to live without her, raising our daughter alone, trying to figure out who I am without her. And now you show up wearing her face, and I don't know what to feel." "I'm sorry." "Don't." Jack's voice was sharper than he meant. "Don't apologize for something that's not your fault. You didn't choose this." Silence settled over the room. Outside, Jack could hear the muffled sounds of the hospital, distant conversations, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, the constant beep of monitors. Normal sounds for a deeply abnormal situation. Claire spoke first. "When I saw that photo, the one of your family, something happened, like a door opening in my mind." She pressed her palm against her forehead. "I keep seeing flashes, a little girl with pigtails, a house with blue shutters, someone singing 'You Are My Sunshine' in the kitchen. Are those my memories, or did they give me Emily's somehow?" Jack's blood ran cold. The house in the photo had blue shutters. Emily used to sing that song to Maddie every night before bed. "That's not possible," he said. You can't transplant memories. That's science fiction." "So is surgically reconstructing someone's face to match a dead woman's. So is whatever they did to make me forget who I was before." Claire's voice rose slightly, touched with hysteria. "I don't know what's real anymore. I look in a mirror and I don't recognize myself. I close my eyes and I see pieces of a life I don't remember living. Am I Sarah Mitchell? Am I some kind of copy of Emily Turner? Or am I just Claire, whoever the hell that is?" The door opened. A doctor entered, Dr. Sarah Patel, according to her name tag, followed by Agent Rivera. Patel was young, Indian American, with kind eyes that reminded Jack of his own mother. "Mr. Turner, I need to examine my patient. If you could step outside—" "No." Claire's hand shot out and grabbed Jack's wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Please, I don't want to be alone with them." "Miss Mitchell," Rivera began, "my name is Claire." "Claire, then, we need to run some tests, neurological scans, psychological evaluations. If the program did what we think it did, there might be ways to restore your original memories." "I don't want my original memories," Claire's voice cracked. "I want to know why I have someone else's face. I want to know why people are trying to kill me. I want to know why I keep seeing that little girl in my head and feeling like my heart is breaking." She was crying now, tears streaming down Emily's face, and Jack couldn't take it anymore. He put his arms around her gently, carefully, like she might shatter, and let her sob against his shoulder. She felt small and fragile and terrified, and he understood that feeling completely. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe. I promise you're safe." Rivera and Patel exchanged glances. Finally, Rivera nodded. "We'll give you a few minutes, but Mr. "Turner, you need to understand, Claire can't leave this hospital until we understand what was done to her and who's still looking for her own protection." "Protection," Claire choked out. "Like the protection that kept me locked in a room for 3 months?" Rivera's expression tightened, but she didn't answer. She and Patel left, closing the door quietly behind them. Jack held Claire until her crying subsided into hiccups and shaky breaths. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red and swollen. Mascara. When had someone put mascara on her, smeared across her cheeks? She looked devastated. She looked like Emily had looked the day her father died, when grief had carved her open and left her raw. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You don't even know me. I shouldn't—" "Stop apologizing." Jack handed her a tissue from the bedside table. "You've been through hell. You're allowed to fall apart." "I don't want to fall apart. I want to understand." She wiped her eyes, smearing the mascara worse. "Jack, that photo, the one of your family. When I looked at it, I didn't just see strangers. I felt something. Love. Loss. Like my heart recognized them even though my brain didn't. How is that possible if I'm not her?" Jack had been avoiding this question, but he couldn't anymore. The agent said the program might have used Emily as a template. Maybe they didn't just copy her face. Maybe they copied other things too. Memories, emotions. I don't know. But why? Why would they use your dead wife's face for whatever they did to me? I don't know that either, but I'm going to find out. Jack stood, his decision made. I'm going to call some people, friends from the fire department who have connections. We're going to figure out what happened to Emily and what they did to you and how it's all connected. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Jack met her eyes, Emily's eyes, and felt that familiar ache in his chest. Because either you're a stranger who got caught up in something evil and needs help, or you're... He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the impossible hope that was trying to take root in his heart. Claire seemed to understand anyway. I'm not her, Jack. Even if they used her somehow, I'm not Emily. She's gone. I know, but his voice wasn't quite steady. Before Claire could respond, the door burst open. Not Rivera or Patel this time. A uniformed police officer Jack didn't recognize, face flushed and urgent. Agent Rivera, we've got a situation in the parking lot. 3 men in a black van, heavily armed. They're asking for the patient in room 347. Room 347, Claire's room. Jack's blood turned to ice. How did they find her? The officer was already backing out. Lockdown protocol. Nobody in or out. Rivera wants all federal witnesses moved to secure locations. We can't move her, Jack protested. She's still recovering from hypothermia. But the officer was gone, probably to alert the rest of the hospital. Jack turned to Claire, who'd gone white as the hospital sheets. They're not going to stop, she whispered. Whoever's behind this, they're going to keep coming until they get me back, or I'm dead. Jack's mind raced. The hospital would be locked down, but that meant they were trapped here with limited exits. If these men were willing to show up armed at a hospital, they weren't going to be deterred by a few locked doors. And Agent Rivera, for all her federal authority, hadn't been able to protect Claire from the first attack. "Get dressed," Jack said suddenly. "Whatever clothes they gave you, put them on." "What? Jack, you heard them? We're in lockdown." "Exactly, which means everyone's focused on the front entrance and the parking lot." He moved to the window and looked out. They were on the second floor, facing the back of the hospital. Below was a small loading area, currently empty except for a few dumpsters and a maintenance van. "I know this hospital. I've been here 100 times for emergency calls. There's a service elevator that goes down to the loading dock. If we can get to it before they lock down the entire building, you want to sneak me out of a hospital in the middle of a federal investigation?" Claire stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Jack, that's insane. They'll arrest you." "Only if they catch us." He grabbed her clothes from the small closet, jeans and a sweatshirt someone had donated, still stiff and new. "And I'd rather risk arrest than trust the same people who might have been involved in what happened to you in the first place." "You don't know that the FBI—" "I don't know anything. That's the problem." Jack tossed her the clothes. "But I know my daughter is at home with a broken window and 2 unconscious kidnappers' blood still on my living room floor. I know armed men are outside this hospital right now. And I know that every official channel we've tried has led to more questions and more danger. So right now I'm trusting my gut. And my gut says we need to get you somewhere safe before someone decides you're too much trouble to protect." Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then, decision made, she started pulling off her hospital gown. "Turn around." Jack turned to face the door, his heart hammering. This was crazy. This was potentially illegal. This could ruin his life, cost him his relationship with Maddie, land him in federal prison. But the alternative was leaving Claire, Emily's face, Emily's voice, Emily's hands, in the hands of people who'd already failed to protect her once. "Okay," Claire said behind him. "I'm dressed." Jack turned. The clothes were too big on her, hanging loose, but she looked more like a person and less like a patient. That was good. They'd blend in better. He cracked the door open and peered out. The hallway was in controlled chaos. Nurses rushing to move patients, security guards taking positions at key intersections, the PA system crackling with codes Jack recognized as lockdown procedures. But nobody was watching Claire's room specifically. They were all focused on containing the threat outside. "Stay close to me," Jack whispered. "If anyone stops us, let me do the talking." They slipped into the hallway. Jack kept Claire slightly behind him, one hand on her elbow, moving with the purposeful stride of someone who had every right to be there. They passed a nurse station, empty, everyone pulled to emergency stations, and turned down a side corridor. The service elevator was at the end of the hall, marked with a faded staff-only sign that nobody paid attention to. Jack hit the call button and tried to look casual while his nerves screamed at him to run. The elevator dinged, doors slid open. Jack pulled Claire inside and jabbed the button for the loading dock level. "What if there are guards down there?" Claire asked as they descended. "Then I'll tell them I'm taking you out the back for safety. I'm still in my volunteer firefighter jacket. That gives me some authority. Not much, but maybe enough." The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors opened onto a dimly lit corridor that smelled of industrial cleaner and old concrete. Jack recognized it. He'd used this entrance dozens of times when delivering patients to the ER from the backside of the hospital. They moved quickly down the corridor toward the loading dock exit. Jack's pickup was parked in the main lot. No good. But the maintenance van he'd seen from the window might have keys in it. People were trusting in small towns, especially hospital maintenance workers who had to move fast between emergencies. The loading dock door was ahead. Jack reached for the handle. "Mr. Turner." Jack spun. Agent Chen stood behind them, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Jack's heart sank. How long had he been following them? "Don't," Jack said. "Don't try to stop us." "I'm not here to stop you." Chen glanced at Claire, then back at Jack. "I'm here to give you a head start." Jack blinked. "What?" "Rivera's a good agent, but she plays by the rules. The rules that say Claire gets transferred to a federal facility for her own protection. The same kind of facility she just escaped from." Chen pulled a key fob from his pocket and tossed it to Jack. "Black sedan, spot 23 in the employee lot. It's clean. No tracking devices, no official registration. Take it and get out of here before the lockdown expands. Jack caught the keys reflexively. Why are you doing this? Because I worked on the original investigation into that program. I saw what they did to people. Saw the files they tried to bury. Chen's expression was grim. Someone high up wanted that program to continue despite the shutdown order. Someone with enough power to make people disappear when they asked too many questions. I don't know who yet, but I know that if Claire goes back into federal custody, she'll vanish just like the others did. The others? Claire's voice was small. There are others like me? There were. 12 subjects total in the final phase. You're the only one we've found alive. Chen moved toward the loading dock door and opened it. The men outside are a diversion. The real threat will come when everyone's focused on them and nobody's watching the back exits. You've got maybe 5 minutes before they realize you're gone. Where should we go? Jack asked. Anywhere but here. Somewhere off the grid. Do you have a place? Jack thought of his cabin, compromised, known to everyone. Then he thought of his brother's hunting lodge, 3 hours north in the mountains. Michael never used it in winter and almost nobody knew it existed. Yeah, I've got a place. Good, keep your phone off. Don't use credit cards. Don't contact anyone you don't absolutely trust. Chen looked at Claire. And you? If you start remembering things, write them down. Details matter. Someone went to a lot of trouble to erase you. That means you know something important. I don't remember anything important, Claire protested. Then maybe that's what they're afraid you'll remember. Chen checked his watch. Go, now, and Mr. Turner, protect her. Whatever she is, whatever was done to her, she doesn't deserve to be someone's science experiment. Jack nodded, throat tight. He and Claire slipped out the loading dock door into the cold night. The employee lot was around the side of the building, shielded from the main entrance where the standoff was presumably still happening. They found Chen's sedan in spot 23, a nondescript black Ford that looked like 1,000 other cars. Jack started the engine. It purred to life, tank showing 3/4 full. Chen had prepared this car knowing they might need it. The realization made Jack's chest tighten with something like gratitude and terror mixed together. Jack, Claire said as he pulled out of the lot. Your daughter. We can't just leave her. We're not. Jack already had a plan forming. Carol Wade will keep her safe tonight. Tomorrow, I'll have Michael pick her up and bring her to the lodge. He's former military. He knows how to stay off radar. But she'll be terrified. She'll think you abandoned her. She'll understand. Jack hoped that was true. Maddie's tough. She's been through worse. They drove in silence through the dark streets of Silver Ridge. Jack kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see flashing lights or pursuit vehicles. But the streets were empty except for snow and shadows. As they reached the edge of town and the road began to climb into the mountains, Claire spoke again. Why are you doing this, really? Jack didn't answer right away. He watched the road unfold in his headlights, the trees pressing close on both sides, the world reduced to this narrow corridor of light and darkness. Finally, he said, I don't know. Maybe because you need help and I'm the only one offering it. Maybe because I'm tired of feeling powerless. Maybe because... He stopped. Because I look like her. Yes, there was no point denying it. Every time I look at you, I see Emily, and I know it's not fair to you. I know you're your own person, whoever you really are, but I can't turn off 15 years of love and memory just because logic says I should. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then, when I looked at that photo, when I saw you and Maddie, something in me broke. Like my heart remembered, even though my brain didn't. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe it's just psychological trauma or whatever they did to me, but it felt real. What felt real? Love. Her voice cracked. I looked at your faces, and I felt love so strong it hurt. And I don't understand how that's possible if I never knew you before. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. That impossible hope was growing again, pushing up through his chest like flowers through snow. He tried to crush it down, tried to remember that Claire wasn't Emily, that Emily was buried in Silver Ridge Cemetery, that the dead didn't come back. But what if she hadn't been dead? What if the accident had been staged? What if Emily had been taken instead of killed? What if the program had used her not as a template, but as a subject? What if everything he thought he knew was a lie? Don't, Claire said softly, like she could read his thoughts. Don't hope for that. It'll only hurt worse when you find out the truth. What if the truth is that you're her? Then I'm Emily with no memory of being Emily. Emily, who doesn't remember loving you or raising Maddie or any of the 15 years you shared. Is that really better than her being gone? Jack didn't have an answer. They drove on into the mountains, into the darkness, into a future that felt as uncertain and treacherous as the ice beneath their tires. Behind them, Silver Ridge disappeared into the night. Ahead, the road climbed higher, toward the lodge and temporary safety and all the impossible questions that waited there. And in the passenger seat, Claire leaned her head against the window and watched the stars appear between the trees, wearing Emily Turner's face like a mask she couldn't remove, carrying memories that might not be hers, running from people who wanted to erase her again. The night stretched out before them, full of danger and possibility, and the terrible weight of hope that refused to die. The lodge emerged from the darkness like something out of a half-remembered dream, its rough timber walls barely visible against the forest that pressed in on all sides. Jack killed the headlights before they reached the final turn, navigating the last quarter mile by moonlight alone. The road, barely more than 2 ruts carved through the trees, hadn't been plowed in months, and the sedan's undercarriage scraped against frozen snow with sounds that made him wince. Beside him, Claire had fallen into an uneasy sleep somewhere around the second hour of driving, her head propped against the window, breath fogging the glass in small, rhythmic clouds. She'd fought it for the first hour, jerking awake every time her eyes closed, but exhaustion had finally won. Jack was grateful for it. The silence had given him time to think, though thinking had only led him in circles. He parked behind the lodge where the car would be hidden from the road and sat for a moment with his hand still on the wheel, letting the engine tick as it cooled. His phone was in his pocket, powered off like Chen had instructed. Maddie would be frantic by now. Carol Wade was good people, but she wasn't Maddie's father, and his daughter had already lost one parent. The thought of her waking up to find him gone made Jack's chest constrict with guilt, but he'd made his choice. Right or wrong, he'd committed to this path. Claire stirred beside him, her eyes opening slowly. For just a moment, she looked confused, that awful disorientation of waking in an unfamiliar place, and then memory crashed back. Jack watched it happen on her face, watched Emily's features contort with fear and grief and something else he couldn't name. "We're here," he said quietly. She sat up and looked at the lodge through the windshield. "Where's here?" "My brother Michael's hunting lodge. He's stationed in Germany, right now with the Air Force. Nobody uses this place in winter." Jack grabbed the emergency supplies he'd stashed in the back seat during a quick stop at an all-night gas station 40 miles back. Bottled water, protein bars, a first aid kit. "It's not much, but it's off the grid. No internet, no phone line. Just us and about 10,000 acres of national forest. And if those men find us out here, then we have the high ground and home field advantage." Jack opened his door and cold rushed in to fill the warm cocoon of the car. "Come on, let's get inside before we freeze." The lodge was locked, but Jack kept a spare key under a fake rock by the back door. Michael's idea of security, which had always made Jack laugh. He wasn't laughing now as he fumbled with frozen fingers to get the key into the lock. Behind him, Claire hugged herself against the cold, her breath coming in sharp white bursts. The door swung open onto darkness that smelled of cedar and old fires, and the particular mustiness of a place that hadn't been lived in for months. Jack felt along the wall for the switch, knowing even as he did it that there wouldn't be power. Michael always shut off the breaker when he left for extended periods. "Stay here," he told Claire. "I need to find the breaker box and get the generator running." He used his phone, risking just enough light to see by, and found the breaker box in the utility room off the kitchen. The main breaker was off, as expected. He flipped it, heard the house systems wake with a distant hum, then headed outside to where the propane generator sat in its weatherproof housing. The generator started on the third try, coughing to life with a roar that seemed impossibly loud in the mountain silence. Jack held his breath, listening for any response from the forest. The sound of approaching vehicles, the snap of branches, anything that might indicate they'd been followed. But there was only the wind in the pines and the distant call of an owl. When he came back inside, Claire had found her way to the living room by feel and was standing in the center of the space like she wasn't sure what to do with herself. Jack flipped on lights, and the lodge bloomed into warm visibility. Exposed beams overhead, a massive stone fireplace dominating one wall, furniture covered in white sheets that made everything look like ghosts. "I'll get the fire going," Jack said. "You should rest." "I've been resting." But Claire moved to the couch anyway, sinking down onto it without bothering to remove the sheet. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. "Jack, what happens now? We can't just hide up here forever." "No, but we can hide long enough to figure out what we're dealing with." Jack knelt by the fireplace and began building a fire from the wood stacked beside it. His hands moved automatically through the familiar motions: crumpled newspaper, kindling arranged in a teepee, larger logs balanced on top. "Chen said you might remember things, details about what they did to you, about who you were before. If we can piece that together, maybe we can figure out who's so desperate to get you back." "And then what? We take that information to the police, the FBI?" Claire's laugh was bitter. "We're fugitives now, Jack. You kidnapped a federal witness from a hospital. That's a felony. Chen gave us the car. That's not kidnapping. Tell that to Agent Rivera when she finds us." Jack struck a match and held it to the newspaper. Flames caught and spread, sending dancing shadows across the walls. "Then we make sure she doesn't find us until we have answers." He fed the fire carefully, watching the flames grow from tentative flickers to confident blaze. Heat began to radiate into the cold room. Behind him, he heard Claire stand and move closer, drawn by warmth the way all living things were drawn to fire. "When I was in that facility," she said quietly, "there was a doctor. She came every few days to check on me. Always wore a surgical mask, but I could see her eyes. She looked sad. Guilty, maybe." Claire wrapped her arms around herself. "One time, she whispered something to me. I didn't understand it then, but I've been thinking about it during the drive. She said, 'I'm sorry about your daughter.'" Jack's hands stilled on the log he was placing. "Your daughter." "I don't have a daughter. At least Sarah Mitchell didn't, according to the file they showed me. So why would she say that?" Claire's voice cracked. "Unless Sarah Mitchell did have a daughter and they erased that from the records. Or unless—" She didn't finish, but Jack heard the unspoken possibility hanging in the air between them. Unless the woman they'd turned into Claire had been someone's mother. Unless Emily. "No," Jack said, more to himself than to her. "Emily didn't have secrets. We told each other everything." "Did you?" Claire moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could feel her presence like heat. "Did she tell you about the night terrors she started having 6 months before she died? About the strange calls she got that made her go pale and leave the room? About the bank account she opened that you didn't know about?" Jack's blood turned to ice. He stood slowly, turning to face her. "How do you know about any of that?" Claire's eyes were wide, frightened of her own words. "I don't know. It came to me, like remembering something I'd forgotten." She pressed her hands to her temples. "God, what's happening to me? Whose memories are these?" Jack wanted to grab her, to shake answers loose that she didn't have. Instead, he forced himself to breathe, to think past the roaring in his ears. Emily did have night terrors. For months before she died. She said they were just stress from work. She said it was her sister having marriage problems. "Did you ever confirm that with her sister?" "No, Jack's voice failed him. "After Emily died, I couldn't bear to talk to her family. The grief was too much. And then time passed and it seemed pointless to dredge it all up." "And the bank account?" Jack didn't want to answer. Admitting it felt like betraying Emily's memory, like opening a door he'd kept locked for 3 years. But Claire was looking at him with Emily's eyes, and he was so tired of carrying secrets alone. "I found evidence of it when I was going through her things after the funeral. Statements from a bank I'd never heard of. There was maybe $5,000 in it." He told himself it was nothing. Maybe Emily saving for a surprise, maybe a safety net she'd wanted to keep separate. "I never followed up on it. What did it matter? She was gone." "It matters now." Claire moved to the window and looked out at the darkness. "Someone made me into a copy of your wife. They gave me her face. Maybe her memories. Why would they do that unless Emily was part of this somehow? The question Jack had been avoiding crystallized in his mind with terrible clarity. The accident, the one that killed her. What if it wasn't an accident? Claire turned from the window. What do you mean? The official report said a drunk driver crossed the center line and hit her head on. He died too, so there was nobody to question. But Emily was a careful driver, paranoid about safety after her brother died in a car crash when she was a kid. And the road where it happened, I've driven it 1,000 times. It's straight, well lit, not the kind of place where accidents just happen. You think someone ran her off the road, deliberately? I think maybe Emily knew something, or saw something, or was involved in something that got her killed. Jack's hands clenched into fists. And I think whoever killed her decided they weren't done with her, so they found someone else, Sarah Mitchell, and they made her into Emily, made her into you. Claire's face had gone pale. But why? If they wanted Emily dead, why recreate her? I don't know, but we're going to find out. Jack pulled out his phone, stared at it for a long moment, then powered it on despite Chen's warning. What are you doing? Calling the one person who might have answers. He scrolled through his contacts until he found Emily's sister's number. Sarah, not Claire, but Sarah Brennan, married name Walsh. He hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. His thumb hovered over the call button. Jack, if they're monitoring phone calls, then they already know where we are. The car probably has a tracker Chen didn't know about. Our credit cards are flagged. We're not as invisible as we think. He pressed call before he could talk himself out of it. Might as well get some answers while we can. The phone rang 4 times before a sleepy voice answered. Hello? Sarah, it's Jack Turner. Silence. Then, Jack? It's 3 a.m. What? I need to know about Emily. The months before she died. Was she acting strange, scared? Did she tell you anything about what was bothering her? More silence, longer this time. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was careful. Jack, where is this coming from? It's been 3 years. I know how long it's been. Please, Sarah, this is important. Life and death important. He heard rustling, footsteps, a door closing. Sarah was moving somewhere private. You can't call me like this. You don't understand what you're asking. Jack's heart kicked into overdrive. What do you mean I can't call you? Sarah, what's going on? I signed papers after Emily died. Men came to my house, federal agents, and they made me sign papers saying I wouldn't talk about her, about what she was involved in. Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They said if I talked, my family would be in danger, so I kept my mouth shut. Went to the funeral, cried, played the grieving sister, and never said a word about what I knew. What did you know? Not over the phone. Jesus, Jack, if they're listening, then it's already too late. Sarah, please, I have someone here who needs your help, someone who... He looked at Claire, at Emily's face, watching him with desperate hope. Someone who looks exactly like Emily. The silence stretched so long Jack thought Sarah had hung up. Then, where are you? Jack told her. He gave her the coordinates of the lodge, told her to come alone, told her not to tell anyone. Sarah agreed in a voice tight with fear and something else. Maybe relief at finally being able to unburden herself. I'll be there by dawn, she said. And Jack? Be careful. The people who took Emily, they don't leave loose ends. The line went dead. Jack stood holding the phone, his heart hammering against his ribs. Claire moved to his side and gently took the phone from his hand, powering it off again. What have we done? She whispered. What we had to. Jack moved back to the fire and added another log. Sarah knows something. Maybe she knows what Emily was involved in. Maybe she knows why someone would want to recreate her. Or maybe she's compromised. Maybe those federal agents who made her sign papers are the same people who are hunting me. Claire sat down hard on the couch. We just gave them our exact location. I know. Jack rubbed his face. He was exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee and the desperate need to protect this woman who wore his dead wife's face. But we're out of options. We can't run forever. Eventually they'll find us, so we force the issue. We bring the fight to us on our terms. That's insane. Yeah, but it's all we've got. The next hours passed in tense silence. Jack fortified the lodge as best he could, checking doors and windows, moving furniture to create defensive positions, laying out Michael's hunting rifles where they'd be accessible. It felt paranoid and military and completely surreal, like he was preparing for a siege instead of waiting for his dead wife's sister. Claire watched him work with an expression he couldn't read. Finally, she said, "You don't have to do this. Any of this. You could turn me over to Rivera, tell her I forced you to help me escape. You'd probably get off with a warning. You could go back to Maddie and your life." Jack didn't stop checking the rifle's sight. "Is that what you want?" "It doesn't matter what I want. I'm nobody. Just some woman who got caught up in something horrible. But you have a daughter. A life. You're risking everything for someone you don't even know. I know you saved my daughter's life tonight." Jack set down the rifle and met her eyes. "When those men broke in, you could have stayed hidden, could have let them take you without a fight, but you didn't. You attacked an armed man to protect me and Maddie. That tells me who you are better than any memory could." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know why I did that. It was instinct, like my body knew what to do even though my brain was screaming to run. Maybe because you're a mother. Maybe because Sarah Mitchell had a daughter and that instinct survived whatever they did to erase you." Jack moved closer, drawn by some force he couldn't name. Or maybe because Emily's still in there somewhere, protecting her family the only way she can. "Don't," Claire stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "Don't project her onto me. I'm not Emily. I can't be Emily for you." "I know." "Do you?" "Because every time you look at me, I see hope in your eyes. Hope that somehow your wife came back. That this nightmare has a happy ending." Her voice cracked. "But it doesn't. Even if I am Emily somehow. If they took her and remade her into me, I don't remember you. I don't remember Maddie. I don't remember 15 years of love and life together. So what difference does it make?" Jack felt like he'd been punched. "It makes all the difference." "Why? Because you're lonely? Because you miss her so much you're willing to pretend a stranger is her?" "Because," Jack's voice failed. He took a breath and tried again. "Because I never got to say goodbye. Because one day she was here and the next day she was gone, and I never got to tell her all the things I should have said. Because I've spent 3 years wondering if she knew how much I loved her, if she died knowing that every single moment with her was the best part of my life." His vision blurred with tears he'd been holding back for 3 years. "So yes, maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm seeing what I want to see, but if there's even a chance that you're her, that some part of Emily survived whatever hell they put you through, then I owe it to her to try. I owe it to the woman I loved to bring her home." Claire was crying now too, Emily's tears on Emily's face. "And if I'm not her, if I'm just Sarah Mitchell with a stolen face, then I help you anyway, because it's the right thing to do, because you deserve better than what happened to you. Because," Jack stopped, realizing the truth as he spoke it, "because somewhere along the way, in the last 12 hours, I started caring about you. Not Emily, you, whoever you are." The confession hung in the air between them. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The fire crackled and popped, and Claire stood frozen, staring at Jack like he'd spoken in a language she didn't understand. Then she crossed the space between them in 3 quick steps and kissed him. It was desperate and messy, and tasted like tears, and Jack's brain short-circuited completely. This was Emily's mouth, Emily's hands clutching his shirt, Emily's body pressed against his. But it wasn't Emily. It was Claire, and she was kissing him like she was drowning, and he was air. Jack pulled back, breathing hard. "Claire, we can't—" "I know." But she didn't let go of his shirt. "I know this is crazy. I know I'm probably trauma bonding or having some kind of psychological break. But when you said you cared about me, not Emily, something inside me broke open, and I needed to know what it felt like to be wanted for myself. Not as a copy or a replacement or a science experiment, just as me." Jack's hands had somehow found their way to her waist. He knew he should step back, should put distance between them, should be rational about this. But rationality had fled somewhere around the moment she'd kissed him. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "I know. We're both exhausted and traumatized and not thinking clearly. I know. And there are armed men hunting you, and federal agents hunting us, and your dead wife's sister is going to show up at dawn." Claire almost smiled. "I know." Jack looked at her, really looked at her, trying to see past Emily's features to whoever lived behind them. He saw fear and determination and exhaustion and something fragile that might have been hope. He saw a woman who'd survived hell and was still fighting. He saw someone worth protecting. And he saw Emily, of course. He would always see Emily. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it was possible to mourn his wife and care about the woman she'd become, or the woman who wore her face. Maybe the heart was big enough for both grief and new feelings. "We should get some sleep," he said finally. "Sarah will be here in a few hours, and we need to be ready." Claire nodded, but didn't move. "Will you stay with me? I don't want to be alone." It was a bad idea. Everything about this situation was a bad idea. But Jack found himself nodding anyway. "Yeah, I'll stay." They made a nest of blankets on the floor in front of the fire, safer than the bedrooms, where they'd be trapped if anyone came through the doors or windows. Jack lay down on one side, Claire on the other, a careful distance between them that felt both necessary and absurd given what had just happened. But as the fire burned down and exhaustion finally claimed them both, Claire shifted closer. And Jack didn't stop her when she curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, her breathing evening out into sleep. He lay awake watching the fire die to embers, one arm around the woman who wore his dead wife's face, waiting for dawn and answers and whatever came next. The rifle was within reach. The doors were locked. Outside, the forest held its secrets. And somewhere in the darkness, people were hunting them. People who'd killed once to keep their secrets and wouldn't hesitate to kill again. Jack held Claire a little tighter and tried not to think about all the ways this could end badly. Tried not to think about Maddie waking up to find him gone. Tried not to think about the kiss they'd shared or what it meant or how he was going to explain any of this if they survived. Instead, he thought about Emily, about their first kiss in the bed of his truck under Montana stars, about the day Maddie was born and how Emily had looked holding their daughter for the first time, about 1,000 small moments, breakfast conversations, and grocery store runs and lazy Sunday mornings that had made up a life. And he thought about the woman sleeping in his arms, who had Emily's face but different dreams, who might be his wife or might be a stranger, who carried mysteries in her reconstructed flesh and forgotten memories. "I'm going to keep you safe," he whispered to her sleeping form. "I promise." It was a promise he had no idea how to keep, but it was all he had to offer, protection and hope, and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else he cared about disappear into the darkness. The fire burned down to nothing. The night pressed close, and Jack Turner held tight to the impossible woman in his arms and waited for the dawn. Dawn came slowly to the mountains, bleeding gray light through the windows until Jack couldn't pretend to be asleep anymore. He'd been awake for the last hour, listening to Claire's breathing, feeling the weight of her against his shoulder, trying to memorize the moment before everything changed again. Because it would change. He could feel it coming like pressure before a storm. Claire stirred as the light strengthened, her eyes opening slowly. For just a second, she looked peaceful. Then awareness crashed back and her body went rigid. "It's okay," Jack said quietly. "Nothing happened. We're safe." She sat up, putting distance between them, and Jack tried not to feel the loss of her warmth. "What time is it?" "Almost 6. Sarah should be here soon." Jack stood and stretched, his back protesting from a night on the floor. He was too old for this. "I'm going to check the perimeter." He grabbed one of Michael's rifles and went outside into the cold morning. The world was still and white, untouched snow stretching in every direction. Their tire tracks from last night were the only disturbance, a clear trail leading straight to the lodge. Jack followed them with his eyes until they disappeared around a bend, and his stomach tightened. Anyone tracking them would find this place easily. He circled the lodge, looking for signs of intrusion, fresh footprints, disturbed snow, anything that suggested they weren't alone. But there was nothing except rabbit tracks and the occasional mark of a deer. The forest was silent in the way only winter forests could be, muffled and waiting. When he came back inside, Claire had found the kitchen and was attempting to make coffee with supplies that had been sitting in the cupboard for months. She looked up when he entered, and something passed between them, Acknowledgement of what had happened last night, the kiss they'd shared, the line they'd crossed. But neither of them mentioned it. "Anything?" she asked. "No, we're alone for now." Jack set the rifle by the door and accepted the mug of coffee she offered. It was weak and slightly stale, but hot. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." Claire leaned against the counter, hands wrapped around her own mug. She'd found a sweatshirt somewhere, probably one of Michael's, and it hung on her small frame. "Jack, about last night." The sound of an engine cut through the morning quiet. Jack moved to the window. A white SUV was making its way up the access road, moving carefully through the snow. He couldn't see the driver yet, but his hand moved instinctively toward the rifle. "Is it Sarah?" Claire asked, tension sharp in her voice. "I don't know. Stay back from the windows." The SUV pulled up beside Chen's sedan and stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened and a woman got out. Jack's breath caught. Sarah Brennan looked exactly like he remembered, tall and angular where Emily had been softer, with the same dark hair but cut shorter, professional. She was wearing jeans and a heavy coat, and she looked around the clearing with the careful attention of someone expecting trouble. She was alone. That was something. Jack opened the door before she could knock. Sarah's eyes widened when she saw him, and then her gaze shifted past him to where Claire stood in the kitchen doorway. The coffee mug fell from Sarah's hands and shattered on the porch. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "They actually did it. They actually brought her back." Jack's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, brought her back? Sarah, what are you talking about?" But Sarah wasn't listening. She pushed past Jack and walked straight to Claire like she was in a trance. Claire backed up, fear flashing across her features, but Sarah kept coming until they were standing face to face. "Emily," Sarah's voice broke. "Jesus Christ, Emily, is that really you?" "I'm not. My name is Claire. I'm not Emily." "You have her scar." Sarah reached out and traced the line near Claire's lip with a shaking finger. "From when she fell off her bike when she was 7. I was there. I saw it happen." Her eyes filled with tears. "You have her hands. The way you hold your coffee cup, the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous. Those are Emily's gestures. Emily's habits." Jack found his voice. "Sarah, talk to me. What do you know?" Sarah finally looked at him, and her expression was shattered. "Emily didn't die in that car accident, Jack. She was taken. They took her and they—" Her voice broke. "They made her into something else, someone else, part of some insane government program that was supposed to create perfect new identities for witnesses and assets. But it went wrong. God, it went so wrong." The world tilted sideways. Jack grabbed the counter to steady himself. "That's not possible. I saw her body. I identified her at the morgue." "You saw a body that looked like Emily, but it wasn't her." Sarah's tears were falling freely now. "They came to me 3 days after the funeral, 2 men in black suits with federal credentials. They told me Emily had been part of a classified program, that she'd volunteered to protect someone important. Protect me, actually. My husband had witnessed something, testified against some very dangerous people, and Emily thought they might come after our family. So she made a deal. She'd be their test subject for this experimental program if they'd protect us." Claire made a sound like she'd been punched. No, that's not... I'm not her. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I remember being Sarah Mitchell." "Sarah Mitchell was the cover identity they created for you after the procedure." Sarah moved closer, her voice gentle but insistent. "You were Emily Turner. You had a husband named Jack and a daughter named Maddie. You lived in Silver Ridge and you taught 3rd grade and you made the best apple pie in 3 counties. And you loved your family more than anything in the world. Jack couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. If Emily volunteered, why didn't she tell me? Why let me think she was dead?" "Because telling you would have put you in danger. The whole point was to die as Emily Turner and be reborn as someone new, someone without connections or history, someone the bad guys couldn't trace back to me." Sarah wiped her eyes. "But the procedure didn't work the way they promised. They said she'd keep her memories, just get a new face and identity. But something went wrong during the neural remapping. She started losing pieces of herself, forgetting things, having seizures. The last time I saw her, God, it must be 2 years ago now, she barely recognized me. Said her name was Claire, and she didn't know what I was talking about. Claire was shaking her head, backing away. No, you're lying. You're part of this, trying to manipulate me. I'm not lying. Emily, please, stop calling me that. Claire's voice rose to a shout. I'm not Emily. I don't remember any of this. But you feel it, don't you? Sarah pressed. When you look at Jack and Maddie, when you see their photos, something in you responds, something deeper than memory. Claire's face crumpled. I don't know what I feel. I don't know what's real anymore. Jack finally found his voice, though it came out rough. Sarah, if what you're saying is true, if this program existed and Emily was part of it, who was running it? Who would authorize something like this? I don't know all the details. The men who came to me, they worked for some division I'd never heard of. Deep black operations stuff. They said it was voluntary, said Emily would be protected, said it was the only way to keep us all safe. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. I should have said no, should have fought harder, but I was terrified for my kids, and Emily was so determined. She said she'd do whatever it took to protect family. That sounds like her, Jack whispered. Emily had always been fiercely protective, would walk through fire for the people she loved, but volunteering to have her identity erased, to forget her own daughter, would she really have done that? Yes, a voice in his head said quietly. If she thought it was the only way to keep Maddie safe, she would have done it in a heartbeat. There has to be records, Jack said. Files, documentation, something that proves what you're saying. If there are, they're buried deep. The program was shut down before Emily's procedure was complete. Something happened, I don't know what, but suddenly the whole operation went dark. The agent stopped contacting me. Emily disappeared into whatever facility they were keeping her in. Sarah looked at Claire with desperate hope. But if you're here, if you escaped, maybe it means they didn't destroy everything. Maybe there's still a way to bring you back. Bring me back to what? Claire's voice was hollow. Even if I am Emily, even if everything you're saying is true, I don't remember being her. I don't feel like her. How do you bring someone back when the person they were is gone? The question hung in the air like smoke. Jack wanted to have an answer, wanted to say something that would make this better. But what could he say? That he'd take her anyway, broken memories and all? That he'd help her rebuild a life from fragments? That he'd love the ghost of his wife and the stranger she'd become? Before anyone could speak, the sound of engines cut through the tension. Multiple vehicles this time, moving fast. Jack ran to the window. 3 black SUVs were tearing up the access road, snow spraying from their tires. No lights, no sirens, just deadly purpose. They found us. Jack grabbed the rifle. Sarah, did you tell anyone you were coming here? No, I swear I didn't. Sarah's face went pale. My phone. God, they must have been tracking my phone. Basement, Jack snapped. There's a root cellar with a trap door. Both of you, get down there now. I'm not hiding while you, Kate, Claire started. This isn't a debate. Those are the same people who tried to kidnap you from the hospital. If they get their hands on you again, you're dead. Jack chambered around. So move. Now. Sarah grabbed Claire's arm and pulled her toward the basement stairs. Claire resisted for a moment, her eyes locked on Jack's. Don't die, she said. Not planning on it. Jack tried to smile, but it came out wrong. Go. They disappeared down the stairs. Jack heard them fumbling in the darkness below, and then the creak of the trapdoor opening. He gave them 10 seconds to hide, then turned his attention to the approaching vehicles. They were close now, maybe 200 yards out. Jack could see armed men inside, tactical gear, professional movements, not government agents making an arrest. Killers coming to clean up loose ends. He thought about making a stand, trying to hold them off, but he was one man with a hunting rifle against a team of trained operators. Even if he got lucky and took out a few, they'd overwhelm him eventually, and then they'd find Claire and Sarah in the basement. No, he needed to buy them time to escape, which meant he needed to be somewhere else. Jack grabbed his coat and slipped out the back door. The forest pressed close here, dense pines providing cover. He circled around the lodge, moving as quietly as he could through the snow, and positioned himself behind a fallen log about 50 yards from the clearing. The SUVs pulled up in a semicircle, blocking any escape by vehicle. Doors opened and men poured out, 8 of them, all armed with assault rifles, moving with military precision. They were wearing tactical gear, but no identifying marks. Private contractors, maybe. Or the kind of government operators who didn't officially exist. One man stood out from the others, older, silver-haired, wearing a long coat instead of tactical gear. He surveyed the lodge with the calm confidence of someone in charge. When he spoke, his voice carried across the clearing. "Mr. Turner, we know you're here. We tracked Mrs. Walsh's vehicle. We're not here to hurt anyone, but we do need to retrieve our asset. Make this easy on yourself. Send out the woman called Claire, and we'll leave you and Mrs. Walsh in peace." Jack said nothing. His finger rested on the trigger, waiting. The silver-haired man sighed. "Very well. We'll do this the hard way." He nodded to his team. "Sweep the building. Non-lethal force for Turner and Walsh, but the asset is expendable if she resists. We have what we need from her already." The words hit Jack like ice water. They'd already gotten what they needed from Claire, which meant they'd planned to kill her at the hospital. Would have killed her if Jack hadn't gotten her out. 4 men moved toward the lodge. Jack waited until they were at the door, their attention focused on breaching. Then he fired. The shot cracked across the clearing. 1 man went down, clutching his shoulder. Not a kill shot. Jack wasn't ready to cross that line yet, but enough to scatter the team and announce his position. Return fire erupted immediately. Bullets tore through the log he was hiding behind, sending splinters flying. Jack rolled to the side and came up firing again, forcing them to take cover. "Flank him," someone shouted. "Left side, through the trees." Jack was already moving, falling back deeper into the forest. The snow was deep here, slowing him down, leaving obvious tracks. But it also muffled sound and provided cover. He could hear the men pursuing, crashing through the undergrowth behind him. He'd bought maybe 3 minutes, enough time for Claire and Sarah to escape through the root cellar's exterior entrance and make it to Sarah's SUV. If they were smart, if they moved fast, they could be gone before the team realized the lodge was empty. A bullet whined past Jack's head, close enough that he felt the displacement of air. He dove behind a tree and returned fire blindly, then kept moving. His lungs burned. His legs ached. He was a firefighter, not a soldier, and he was badly outmatched. Something hit him from the side, a tackle that drove him into the snow. Jack lost his grip on the rifle and found himself grappling with one of the operators, a younger man with cold eyes and quick hands. They rolled through the snow, fighting for position. Jack got an elbow into the man's throat and bought himself space. He scrambled for the rifle, but the operator recovered faster and kicked it away. Then he was on Jack again, and this time there was a knife. The blade came down in a silver arc. Jack caught the man's wrist, but the operator was stronger, younger, trained for this. The knife descended slowly despite Jack's resistance, the point aimed at his throat. "This is it," Jack thought with strange clarity. "This is how I die." In the snow, in the mountains, never knowing if Claire was really Emily, never seeing Maddie again, never. The gunshot was deafening. The operator jerked and fell sideways, blood blooming on his shoulder. Jack looked up to see Claire standing 20 feet away, Sarah's service weapon. Had she been carrying? Held in shaking hands. "Get away from him!" Claire's voice was high and sharp. "Get away, or I'll kill you!" The operator raised his hands and backed away slowly. More men were converging through the trees, but they'd stopped advancing when Claire fired. Nobody wanted to die for a paycheck. Jack got to his feet, his heart hammering. "I told you to run. And I don't take orders well." Claire kept the gun trained on the operator. Sarah got the SUV started. "We're leaving. All of us. Now." "Miss Mitchell, or should I say Mrs. Turner." The silver-haired man had followed his team into the forest and now stood at the edge of the clearing, hands in his coat pockets, looking remarkably unconcerned about the gun pointed in his general direction. "You've caused us considerable trouble, but it's over now. Come with us quietly, and we'll ensure your husband and child are protected." "My husband is dead," Jack said coldly, "and you're not getting near my daughter." "Not that daughter, Mrs. Turner's other child, the one she was carrying when we began the procedure." The man smiled, and it was the cruelest expression Jack had ever seen. "Did she not mention it?" "She was 8 weeks pregnant. We preserved the fetus during the neural remapping. The child is in a facility under our care, 3 years old now, healthy, waiting for her mother." The world stopped. Claire made a sound like an animal in pain. The gun wavered in her hands. Jack couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in his ears. Emily had been pregnant. They'd had another child, and he'd never known. And she was alive, and these monsters had her. You're lying, Claire whispered. I'm not. And you know it. Some part of you remembers, doesn't it? The morning sickness, the secret you were keeping, the joy you felt knowing you were going to be a mother again. The man took a step closer. We can take you to her. Let you hold your daughter. All you have to do is come with us. Finish what you started. Don't listen to him. Jack moved to Claire's side, his hand finding hers. He's manipulating you, even if there is a child. There is. The certainty in Claire's voice made Jack's heart crack. I don't remember it clearly, but I feel it. Empty, like something was taken from me that I can't name. She looked at Jack with tears streaming down her face. What if he's telling the truth? What if I have a daughter out there? Then we find her, but not by surrendering to the people who stole your life. Jack squeezed her hand. Emily wouldn't give up, and neither will you. Something shifted in Claire's expression. Steel replacing fear. She turned back to the silver-haired man and raised the gun with steady hands. If I have a daughter, I'll find her myself. And when I do, I'm going to make you pay for every second you kept her from me. Her voice was cold and clear and absolutely certain. Back away. Now. Or I start shooting. The man studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled again, that same cruel smile. You've remembered who you are. Good. That makes this more interesting. He gestured to his team. Let them go. Sir? One of the operators protested. Let them go. The man's eyes never left Claire's face. Mrs. Turner has proven herself worthy of the hunt. And now that she knows what we have, she'll come to us eventually. They always do. The operators backed away slowly, weapons lowered but not holstered. Jack grabbed his rifle from the snow and kept it trained on them as he and Claire retreated through the trees. His mind was racing, trying to process everything that had just happened. They reached the clearing where Sarah had the SUV running. Claire climbed in without a word, her face blank with shock. Jack got in beside her and Sarah gunned the engine before he even had his door closed. They tore down the access road, fishtailing on the snow, expecting at any moment to hear the sound of pursuit. But the black SUVs stayed where they were. True to the silver-haired man's word, they were letting them go. Because why chase them when Claire would come back on her own? They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Sarah finally spoke. Is it true? Was Emily pregnant? I don't know. Jack's voice sounded hollow. She never told me. But if she volunteered for that program knowing she was carrying our child, he couldn't finish. The betrayal cut too deep. She did it to protect Maddie, Claire said quietly. She was staring out the window at the passing trees, but Jack knew she wasn't really seeing them. I can feel it. The decision. The fear. She knew the people after Sarah's family wouldn't stop, knew they'd eventually find a way to get to Maddie, so she made herself the target, drew them away by becoming someone else. And got pregnant in the process? Jack's hands clenched into fists. How does that timeline even work? The procedure took months, Sarah said. They didn't do everything at once. First was the facial reconstruction, then the psychological conditioning, then the memory work. If Emily was newly pregnant when she started, she could have been 4 or 5 months along before they finished. And they just took the baby. Jack's voice broke. Took her from Emily's womb and kept her. Raised her in God knows what kind of facility. What kind of monsters? The kind that think they're above the law, Sarah said bitterly. The kind that can make people disappear and call it national security. Claire's hands were pressed against her stomach, and Jack realized she was crying silently. He reached for her, but she flinched away. Don't, please, I can't. She took a shuddering breath. There's a child out there. My child. Our child. And I don't remember her. I don't remember carrying her or feeling her kick or making plans for her. They stole that from me. Stole all of it. Then we get her back, Jack said, with fierce certainty. I don't care what it takes. We find our daughter and we bring her home. How? We don't even know where she is, and every agency that might help us is either compromised or will arrest us on sight. Claire looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. Jack, I'm remembering things. Little flashes, being strapped to a table, needles in my spine. A doctor telling me the baby was healthy, that they'd take good care of her. I begged them to let me hold her, just once. They said no. Her voice cracked completely. They said it would interfere with the procedure. that I needed to forget her to become someone new, and I did. I forgot my own child. Jack pulled her into his arms despite her resistance, and this time she didn't pull away. She collapsed against him, sobbing with grief that was 3 years old and fresh as an open wound. Sarah drove on through the mountains, following roads that wound through endless forest. Behind them, the lodge disappeared into the trees. Ahead, the future stretched out uncertain and dangerous. But for now, in this moment, Jack held the woman who was and wasn't his wife, while she mourned for the daughter they'd never known existed. And somewhere in a facility hidden from the world, a 3-year-old girl played and laughed and lived, unaware that her mother was remembering her at last, unaware that her family was coming for her. The silver-haired man had been right about one thing. Claire would go back. They all would. Not because they were caught or outmaneuvered, but because family was worth any risk, worth any sacrifice. Emily Turner had proven that 3 years ago when she'd volunteered to die. Now it was Jack and Claire's turn to prove it, to walk into the darkness willingly, knowing they might not come out, but they'd bring their daughter home, or die trying. They drove until the gas tank showed empty and Sarah's hands were shaking too badly to grip the wheel. A small town materialized out of the Montana wilderness like something from another era. Population maybe 300, one gas station, a diner with a broken neon sign. The kind of place where strangers were noticed, but questions weren't asked if you paid cash. Sarah pulled into the gas station and killed the engine. For a long moment, none of them moved. They sat in the SUV watching snow begin to fall again, each lost in their own thoughts, their own horror at what they'd learned. Finally, Jack spoke. "We need a plan. We can't just drive in circles until they find us again." "There is no plan." Claire's voice was flat, emptied out. "They have my daughter. They'll keep using her as leverage until I surrender." "Then we take away their leverage." Jack turned in his seat to face her. "We find out where they're keeping her and we get her out." "How?" "We don't have resources. We don't have allies. We don't even know who we're fighting." Claire pressed her palms against her eyes. "That man at the lodge? He had military contractors, government access, the ability to track us anywhere. We're 3 people in a stolen car. What chance do we have?" "The chance that we're willing to die for this, and they're just doing a job." Jack's voice was hard. "That has to count for something." Sarah had been silent since they left the mountains, but now she cleared her throat. "There might be someone who can help. Before they shut down the program, Emily told me about a researcher, Dr. Rebecca Moss. She was part of the neural mapping team, but she had ethical concerns about what they were doing. Emily said Dr. Moss was documenting everything, procedures, patient outcomes, locations, building a case to expose the whole operation. "And they didn't kill her?" Claire asked. "Maybe they tried. Maybe she went into hiding. But if she's still alive, she'd have information. Names, facilities, records of what happened to you." Sarah pulled out her phone, hesitated. "I can try to find her, but the moment I search for her name, we're exposed again." Jack thought for a moment. "Do it. We're already exposed. They tracked you here. They know we're together. Hiding at this point is useless. We need intelligence more than we need stealth." Sarah nodded and began typing on her phone. Jack got out to pump gas, paying cash from the emergency fund he'd grabbed from the lodge. The attendant was a kid barely out of high school who didn't look up from his phone. Good. The less memorable they were, the better. When he got back in the SUV, Sarah had an address pulled up on her screen. "Rebecca Moss. There's a research scientist by that name living outside Missoula. Could be her, could be coincidence. But it's only 2 hours from here." "Then that's where we go." Jack met Claire's eyes in the rearview mirror. She looked devastated, but there was steel underneath the grief now. The same steel Emily had always had when it mattered most. "We find Dr. Moss. We get answers. And then we get our daughter." The drive to Missoula passed in tense silence. Claire had moved to the back seat and curled up against the window, her eyes closed but her breathing pattern wrong for sleep. Sarah kept checking the mirrors, jumping at every vehicle that appeared behind them. Jack rode shotgun with Michael's rifle across his lap, watching the landscape roll past and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. They were betting everything on a scientist who might not be the right person, might not want to help, might already be dead. They were walking into another potential trap with no backup, and dwindling options. And somewhere in the background, Maddie was still with Carol Wade, probably terrified that her father had abandoned her the same way her mother had. The guilt was crushing, but Jack kept moving forward because stopping meant giving up, and he'd never learned how to do that. Dr. Rebecca Moss lived in a small house on the outskirts of Missoula, backed up against national forest land. The property was surrounded by a privacy fence topped with cameras, and Jack spotted at least 2 motion sensors before they even reached the gate. Someone who valued security. That was either very good or very bad. Sarah pulled up to the intercom and pressed the button. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a woman's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp with suspicion. "Who are you and what do you want?" "Dr. Moss? My name is Sarah Walsh. My sister was Emily Turner. She was part of the Prometheus program." "Static? Then, that program doesn't exist." "Yes, it does. And you know it does because you documented everything they did, including what they did to my sister." Sarah's voice cracked. "Please, we need your help. Emily's here. She's alive, but she doesn't remember who she is. And they have her daughter." More silence. Jack could feel time stretching out, could imagine armed men converging on this location even now. Then the gate buzzed open. "Park in the garage. Quickly!" They pulled into a detached garage that was surprisingly spacious. The door rolled down behind them immediately, plunging them into darkness before fluorescent lights flickered on. A door at the back opened and a woman appeared, 50s, gray hair pulled back, wearing glasses and a cardigan that had seen better days. She looked like someone's grandmother, not someone who held secrets worth killing for. Until you saw her eyes. Those were the eyes of someone who'd seen terrible things and decided to fight back. "Inside. Now." Dr. Moss ushered them through the door into a house that was part home, part fortress. Jack saw reinforced doors, security monitors showing every angle of the property, and what looked like a panic room entrance in the hallway. "You were followed?" "We don't think so," Jack said, "but they've found us twice already." "Then you have maybe an hour before they find you again." Moss led them to a kitchen where a laptop sat open on the table, surrounded by stacks of files. Show me Emily." Claire stepped forward, and Moss's expression crumpled. "Oh, God. They actually completed it. I'd prayed they'd abandoned the neural remapping after the first failures, but they used her. They used Emily." "You know her?" Claire's voice was small. "I knew her 3 years ago. She came to the facility as a volunteer, desperate to protect her family from some threat I was never told about. She was so determined, so certain she was doing the right thing." Moss removed her glasses and wiped them with shaking hands. "I tried to talk her out of it, showed her the failure rate, the patients who'd lost themselves completely, but she wouldn't listen, said her daughter was worth any risk." Jack's chest felt tight. Both daughters. She was pregnant. "I know. She told me in confidence, made me promise not to record it in her file. She was afraid if they knew about the pregnancy, they'd use the baby as leverage." Moss looked at him with profound sadness. "I'm sorry. I should have done more. Should have refused to participate. But I told myself I could protect her from the inside, could make sure the procedure went well. Instead, I watched her die by degrees. Watched Emily Turner disappear, and this broken shadow take her place." "I'm not broken." Claire's voice was stronger now. "I'm here. I'm fighting. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything." Moss moved to the laptop and began pulling up files. "You escaped from the Sacramento facility 4 months ago. Fire in the East Wing, security breach, 3 subjects unaccounted for. They found 2 of them within a week. But you disappeared. How?" "I don't remember clearly. Just running, stealing cars, moving constantly." Claire moved closer to look at the screen. "They kept me in a white room, fed me through a slot, took blood samples every day. Monitoring your neural patterns. The remapping process isn't stable. Memories resurface, old personality traits bleed through. They were probably trying to determine if you needed additional conditioning." Moss pulled up a schematic. "This is the Sacramento facility. It's where they keep failed subjects and anyone waiting for additional procedures. High security, but not impenetrable." Jack leaned over her shoulder. "That's where they'd keep the child?" Most likely. The Prometheus program had a secondary objective, creating next-generation subjects using genetic material from successful remappings. If Emily's child survived the extraction, she'd be kept there for observation and eventual conditioning. The clinical language made Jack's stomach turn. She's 3 years old. They're conditioning a 3-year-old? They're preparing her for eventual integration into a new identity. It's monstrous, but from their perspective, it's efficiency. Moss's expression was grim. The program director, Dr. Marcus Vance, the silver-haired man you encountered, he believes that identity is just software that can be rewritten, that human consciousness is malleable. The children raised in the program from birth would be perfect blank slates. He's insane, Sarah whispered. He's a true believer, and he has powerful backers, military contractors, intelligence agencies, politicians who see the strategic value in being able to completely replace enemy assets or create deep cover operatives who believe their own legends. Moss pulled up more files. I've been documenting everything for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to expose this. But every journalist I contact ends up dead or discredited. Every law enforcement official I approach suddenly loses interest. Vance has protected this program with every resource at his disposal. Then we don't expose it, Jack said. We destroy it. We get Claire's daughter out and we burn that facility to the ground. Moss studied him. You understand that's a suicide mission? That facility has armed guards, multiple security checkpoints, fail-safes designed to prevent exactly what you're proposing? I don't care. And you? Moss looked at Claire. You don't remember your daughter, don't remember being a mother. Are you willing to die for a child you can't recall? Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. I don't need to remember her to know she's mine. I can feel it. This emptiness inside me, like something vital was torn away. That's my daughter. My family. She looked at Jack. Our family. And I'm not letting them keep her. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding, commitment, maybe even love. Not the love Jack had shared with Emily, but something new. Something forged in crisis and shared purpose. Moss nodded slowly. Then we'll need a plan. And we'll need help. I thought you said every contact you had was compromised, Sarah said. Every official contact. But there are people inside the program who've been waiting for someone brave or crazy enough to make a move. Technicians who keep the systems running. Guards who follow orders but hate what they're doing. A few researchers like me who stayed because leaving meant abandoning the subjects. Moss began typing rapidly. If I reach out to them, if I tell them someone's actually going to try to shut this down, some of them will help. Over the next 2 hours, Moss worked her network. Phone calls made on burner phones, encrypted messages sent through secure channels, favors called in from people Jack would never meet. Slowly, a plan took shape. Not a good plan. There was no such thing in this situation, but a plan with at least a slim chance of success. They'd need to get inside the facility, which meant someone had to surrender. Claire was the obvious choice, but Jack refused to use her as bait. Instead, he'd turn himself in, claim he'd kidnapped Claire and was willing to trade information about her location for leniency. It was thin, but Vance wanted Claire badly enough that he might take the bait. Once inside, Jack would disable the security systems with help from Moss's contacts on the inside. Sarah would create a diversion at the main entrance, drawing guards away from the residential wing where the children were kept. And Claire, with Moss guiding her remotely, would infiltrate through a maintenance entrance and find their daughter. It won't work, Claire said flatly when Moss finished outlining the plan. There are too many variables, too many things that can go wrong. Yes, Moss agreed, but it's the best option we have. And every day we wait, Vance gets closer to finding you. Better to act now while we have the element of surprise. Jack looked at Claire. Your call. She's your daughter. If you're not ready, I'll never be ready, but I'm willing. Claire's hand found his and squeezed. We do this together, all the way to the end. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Moss provided equipment, wire cutters, lockpicks, communication devices, weapons for those who knew how to use them. She showed them blueprints until Jack could navigate the facility in his sleep. She drilled them on security procedures and guard rotations and exactly where the children's wing was located. And she showed Claire a photo. This is your daughter. Her designation in the system is Subject 47, but Emily called her Hope. She wanted her named Hope. The photo showed a small girl with dark curls in Jack's eyes, playing with blocks in a sterile white room. She looked healthy, well cared for, and completely alone. No other children, no toys except the blocks. Just a 3-year-old in a white room learning to be nobody. Claire stared at the photo for a long time. When she looked up, tears were streaming down her face. She has his smile. I don't remember her, but I know she has his smile. She does. Moss's voice was gentle. And if we succeed, you'll have the rest of your life to get to know her. As evening fell, they made their final preparations. Jack called Carol Wade from a burner phone and told her to take Maddie to Michael's place in Colorado, that he'd explain everything when this was over. Carol asked no questions, just promised to keep his daughter safe. It was the most anyone could ask. Sarah hugged Claire for a long time. I'm sorry for letting them take you, for not fighting harder to stop this. You did what you could. Claire pulled back. And now you're helping me finish it. That's what matters. At midnight, they left Moss's house in a van the researcher had acquired from somewhere. Jack drove with Claire beside him, Sarah in the back preparing the diversion materials, Moss monitoring communications and coordinating with her contacts inside. The Sacramento facility was 300 miles south. They'd arrive at dawn when shift changes created small windows of opportunity. Timing would be everything. They drove through the night, watching the landscape change from mountains to valley, from wilderness to sprawling suburbs. Jack kept his eyes on the road and tried not to think about all the ways this could end badly. Tried not to imagine Maddie growing up without parents, or Claire dying before she could hold her daughter, or that little girl spending her whole life in white rooms. Instead, he thought about Emily, about the woman she'd been, fierce and loving and willing to sacrifice everything for family. Claire was her in so many ways, even without the memories, the same determination, the same core of strength that wouldn't break no matter how hard they tried to break it. Jack, Claire's voice pulled him from his thoughts. If this goes wrong, if I don't make it out, promise me you'll get Hope. Promise me she won't grow up in that place. We're both making it out. Promise me. Jack looked at her, at Emily's face in the dashboard lights, at the woman who'd somehow become essential to him in just 3 days. I promise. But you're going to be there too. You're going to hold your daughter and watch her grow up and teach her all the things her mother would have wanted her to know. How can I teach her about a mother I don't remember being? Then you'll make new memories, build a new relationship. Parents and children do it every day, learning each other, figuring out how to fit together. Jack's hand found hers. You don't need Emily's memories to be Hope's mother. You just need to love her. And I know you already do. Claire was crying again, but she was smiling too. When this is over, if we survive, I want to try. To be a family. Not trying to recreate what you had with Emily, but something new. Something ours. I'd like that. Jack's voice was rough. More than you know. They drove on as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The facility appeared on the horizon, a sprawling complex disguised as a research center, anonymous and unremarkable. Jack felt his pulse quicken. This was it, the point of no return. He pulled over 2 miles from the facility and got out. This was where they separated. Jack going in through the front as a prisoner, Claire and Sarah approaching from different angles, Moss staying mobile to coordinate. They stood in a circle for a moment, 4 people who'd been strangers days ago and were now betting everything on each other. Remember the plan, Moss said. Jack surrenders at 0600. That's when my contact on security will route your processing through the West Wing instead of the main holding cells. You'll have a 3-minute window to reach the utility corridor. Sarah, your diversion starts at 0615 exactly. Claire, you enter through the maintenance entrance at 0620. Any deviation, and the whole thing falls apart. They all nodded. Jack looked at Claire one more time, trying to memorize her face in case this was the last time he saw it. Don't die, she said, echoing her words from the lodge. Not planning on it. He tried to smile. See you on the other side. Then he was walking toward the facility alone, hands raised, ready to surrender to the people who'd destroyed his wife and stolen his daughter. Behind him, Claire and Sarah melted into the shadows to take up their positions. Ahead, armed guards spotted him and raised weapons. Jack kept walking, kept his hands up, kept breathing despite the fear trying to choke him. A guard's voice crackled through a loudspeaker. "Identify yourself and state your business." "My name is Jack Turner. I'm here to trade information about Claire Mitchell's location in exchange for leniency." That got their attention. Within minutes, he was surrounded by guards, searched, cuffed, and marched inside. The facility was exactly as Moss had described: clinical corridors, security checkpoints every 50 feet, the hum of ventilation systems. Jack counted doors and turns, orienting himself. They took him to a holding room and left him alone. Jack checked his watch. 6:03. Right on schedule. In 12 minutes, Sarah would start the diversion. In 17, Claire would be inside. The door opened. Dr. Marcus Vance walked in, immaculate in a gray suit, that cruel smile on his face. "Mr. Turner, how good of you to come to us, though I'm disappointed you didn't bring Mrs. Turner with you." "She's gone. Ran when she realized I was going to turn her in." Jack kept his voice steady. "But I know where she's headed. I can take you to her." "Can you? Or are you stalling while you try to mount some foolish rescue attempt?" Vance sat down across from Jack. "You're not clever enough to deceive me, Mr. Turner. You're a small-town firefighter playing hero. This is beyond your capabilities." "Maybe, but I'm the one who's seen Claire, Emily, whoever she is, and I'm the one who knows she's remembered something important, something about her time in the program." That got Vance's attention. "What has she remembered?" "Tell me about my daughter first, about Hope." Vance's smile widened. "Ah. So Mrs. Turner told you about the child. How touching." "Yes, Hope is alive and well. A fascinating case study in early childhood conditioning. She's showing remarkable aptitude for the program." Jack's hands clenched into fists. "She's 3 years old. She should be playing with toys and learning to read, not being conditioned." "She's the future. The first generation of true Prometheus subjects, raised from infancy to be whatever we need them to be." Vance leaned forward. "But I'm willing to make a trade. You give me Claire's location, and I'll let you see Hope before we wipe your memory and release you. You'll never remember any of this, but you'll have had one moment with your daughter." It was 6:14. 1 minute until Sarah's diversion. Jack needed to keep Vance talking. "How do I know you won't just kill me?" "Because you're not important enough to kill. You're a loose end, but a manageable one. We'll erase the last week from your memory, implant a few false recollections about Emily's death and Claire's disappearance, and send you home to your remaining daughter. You'll never know the difference." "And Claire?" "Will come home to us eventually. They always do. Maternal instinct is remarkably predictable." Vance checked his watch. "But I'm losing patience. Where is she?" An alarm began to wail. Vance's head snapped up. "What?" The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Vance lunged for the door, but Jack was faster. He drove his shoulder into the doctor's chest and sent him sprawling. His cuffed hands were awkward, but he managed to grab Vance's security card before guards burst into the room. "Lock down," someone was shouting. "Fire in the main entrance! All personnel to stations!" In the chaos, Jack slipped into the corridor. The utility access was 20 feet ahead, disguised as a janitor's closet. He reached it as gunfire erupted somewhere in the building, Sarah doing her part. The door was locked. Jack used Vance's card and it clicked open. He plunged into darkness, found the stairs, and began to descend. According to Moss, these maintenance corridors connected every part of the facility, including the children's wing. He ran through the darkness, counting turns, following Moss's instructions burned into his memory. Behind him, he could hear guards searching, shouting, getting closer. But he was committed now, all in. The corridor ended at another door. Jack used the card again and found himself in a residential hallway painted in cheerful yellows and blues, a horrible mockery of normalcy. Rooms lined both sides, each with a small window. Jack looked through windows as he ran, seeing children of various ages in various rooms, all alone, all playing quietly with minimal toys. His heart broke for every one of them. But he was looking for one specific child. Dark curls. Jack's eyes. 3 years old. He found her in the 7th room, Hope was sitting on a small bed holding a stuffed rabbit and singing to herself. The song made Jack's breath catch. You Are My Sunshine. Emily's song, the one she used to sing to Maddie every night. The door was locked. Jack fumbled with the card reader, his hands shaking. It beeped red. Wrong clearance level. He tried again, red again. No, no, no! Step away from the door. Jack turned to find 2 guards with weapons trained on him. He raised his hand slowly, the security card falling from his fingers. This was it. He'd failed. Failed Claire. Failed Hope. Failed Emily's sacrifice. Gunfire erupted from behind the guards. They went down, and Claire was there, Moss's pistol in her hands, her face set with fierce determination. The card won't work, Jack said. Wrong clearance level. Claire didn't hesitate. She shot the lock. The door swung open. Hope looked up, startled by the noise. She saw Claire, and her face lit up with the kind of recognition that defied logic. Mama? Her voice was small and uncertain. You came back? Claire's face crumpled. She dropped the gun and fell to her knees, arms open. Baby, oh God, baby, yes, Mama came back. Hope ran to her. The moment they collided, the moment Hope's small arms wrapped around Claire's neck, and Claire held her daughter for the first time in 3 years, something fundamental shifted in the universe. Jack saw it happen, saw Claire's face transform, saw tears streaming down both their faces, saw a mother and daughter finding each other across an impossible distance. We have to go, Jack said gently. Guards are coming. Claire stood with Hope in her arms, the little girl clinging to her like she'd never let go. They ran back the way Claire had come, through corridors that Moss directed them through via earpiece. Behind them, the facility was in chaos, alarms screaming, guards searching, Vance somewhere shouting orders. They burst out of the maintenance entrance to find Sarah waiting with the van running. Moss was in the driver's seat. Get in, they're right behind you. They piled in and Moss floored it. Bullets sparked off the van's armored panels. She'd thought of everything. And then they were on the access road, leaving the facility behind. Jack looked back to see guards pouring out of the building, vehicles starting up for pursuit. But then something extraordinary happened. Some of the guards stopped running, some lowered their weapons. Moss's contacts, making the choice to let them escape. It wouldn't stop Vance forever, but it gave them a chance. They drove for an hour before anyone spoke. Hope had fallen asleep in Claire's arms, exhausted from the adrenaline. Claire was crying silently, her face buried in her daughter's dark curls. We did it, Sarah finally whispered. We actually did it. We got her out, Moss corrected. But Vance won't stop. He'll hunt you until... Let him hunt. Claire's voice was fierce. I remember now. Not everything, but enough. I remember being Emily. I remember choosing this. And I remember that I'd do it again to protect my family. She looked at Jack. Our family. Jack reached over and took her free hand. Where do we go from here? Anywhere but here, Moss said. I have safe houses, contacts in Canada who can provide new identities, real ones, not programmed. You'll have to disappear for a while. Maybe forever. Maddie, Jack said suddenly. I need to get Maddie. I'll arrange it. She can meet you at the Canadian border. Moss glanced in the rearview mirror. You understand you're giving up your old lives completely? Jack, you'll never be a firefighter in Silver Ridge again. Sarah, you'll have to leave your family. Claire, Emily, you'll never fully recover what you lost. I know. Claire looked at Hope sleeping peacefully, then at Jack. But we'll build something new, something they can't touch. The next weeks were a blur of motion and paranoia. They crossed into Canada using passports Moss provided. Michael brought Maddie to meet them at a cabin in British Columbia, and Jack watched his 2 daughters meet for the first time in 3 years. Maddie had stared at Hope with wonder, then at Claire with confusion, then burst into tears and hugged them both. Sarah stayed long enough to see them settled, then disappeared to protect her own family from retribution. Moss vanished into her network of whistleblowers and activists still fighting to expose the Prometheus program from the shadows. And Jack, Claire, Hope, and Maddie began the slow process of becoming a family. It wasn't easy. Claire's memories continued to resurface in fragments. Moments with baby Maddie, her wedding day, lazy Sunday mornings with Jack. But they were incomplete. like watching a movie with missing scenes. She grieved for what she'd lost while trying to build something new. Hope had nightmares at first, waking up screaming about white rooms and doctors. But with time and patience and love, she learned to be a child instead of a subject. She learned to laugh and play and trust that her mother wouldn't disappear again. Maddie struggled with having a mother who looked like Emily but wasn't quite Emily, a father who'd lied to protect her, a sister she'd never known existed. But she was resilient, and she wanted her family back badly enough to accept the complicated reality of it. And Jack learned to love Claire for who she was now, not just for the ghost of Emily she carried. Learned that sometimes second chances came in unexpected forms. Learned that family wasn't about perfect memories or uncomplicated histories, but about choosing each other every day despite the damage and trauma and impossible circumstances. 6 months after the rescue, they were living in a small town on Vancouver Island under new names. Jack worked construction. Claire taught at a local elementary school. Her love of children had survived the neural remapping. Maddie was excelling in her new school, and Hope was learning to be a regular 3-year-old, messy and loud and wonderfully alive. One evening, as the sun set over the Pacific, Jack found Claire sitting on their porch watching the girls play in the yard. She'd been crying. He could see the tear tracks, but she was smiling too. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I am. For the first time in 3 years, I actually am." She leaned against him. "I remembered something today. Our wedding. Just flashes. My dress, your face when I walked down the aisle, the way you held me during our first dance. It hurt remembering, but it also felt like finding a piece of myself I thought was gone forever. You're healing, slowly, but you are. We're all healing." Claire watched Hope chase Maddie through the grass, their laughter carrying on the wind. Building something new from the broken pieces. It's not what either of us expected our lives to be. "No, but I wouldn't change it." Jack took her hand. "Not if it means losing this, losing you and Hope, and having our family whole again. Even though I'm not really Emily, you're exactly who you need to be. Emily made sure of that when she chose to become you." Jack kissed her temple. "She loved us enough to sacrifice everything, and you love us enough to stay and fight for this family every day. That's more than enough." Claire turned and kissed him properly, and it felt like a promise, like a new beginning, like proof that sometimes love survived even when everything else was torn apart and rebuilt. Maddie called them for dinner. Hope ran up and grabbed Claire's hand, chattering about something wonderful and ordinary. And as they went inside together, this pieced-together, battle-scarred, absolutely perfect family, Jack felt something he hadn't felt since Emily died. He felt home. The Prometheus program would continue its hunt. Vance would never stop looking. They'd always be running, always be watching over their shoulders. But for now, in this moment, they were together. They were safe. They were a family. And that was its own kind of miracle. Outside, the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new reasons to fight. But tonight, the Turner family, whatever name they wore now, would have dinner together, would laugh and talk and hold each other close, would prove that even when the powerful tried to erase you, even when they stole your face and your memories and your very identity, love found a way to survive. Because love wasn't stored in memories or faces or names. It lived in the choices you made, the people you protected, the life you built from ashes. Emily Turner had known that when she volunteered to become someone else. Claire had proven it when she fought her way back to her daughter. And Jack demonstrated it every day when he chose to love the woman she'd become. Their story wasn't over, but the worst was behind them. And ahead was life, messy and complicated and beautiful, exactly as it should be. In the kitchen, Hope laughed at something Maddie said. Claire called out that dinner was ready. And Jack Turner, once a small-town firefighter who thought he knew what loss meant, held his family close and finally understood what Emily had sacrificed everything to protect. Not just survival, but the chance to love again, the chance to be whole, the chance for hope. And in the end, that had always been worth fighting for.